easy machete mods for an amazing increase in performance and utility. We'll be talking about the handle and the blade, how to modify the handle so it's much more comfortable and there's less shock to your hand. It's much grippier so you can use it longer and easier, get a lot more done, do what you need to do, a lot less chance of injuring yourself. Then we'll be talking about the blade, about the sweet spot and how to sharpen a chopping edge, but then down here a fine carving edge, how to make a point for piercing and drilling, how you can use this for smashing, and here is a scraper edge, how to sharpen your saw so it works a lot better. And time is short, so I'd like to jump right in. I'll put the link in the description. The previous video, I went over this machete by Trooper. It's their 12-inch machete, meaning 12-inch blade. They call it their Rambo style machete. And I had sharpened the utility edge on the sweet spot, on the chopping edge. But otherwise I left it stock. So I was using the stock handle, which was kind of terrible, really. I mean, I was trying to be kind about it, but the original handle was transmitting way too much shock to my hand. Of course, my joints are old, but still my hands were starting to hurt for much chopping at all. And back here, the handle was too angular, not quite a 90 degree on the angles, but too close to 90, too sharp an angle. So you can look at that previous video, and also I'll show you the front. Here I didn't modify it, so see that sharpest edge? Won't cut you, but it's just uncomfortable. I left it there because my hand doesn't go there. This is my guard and I feel that. I know my fingers aren't supposed to be in front of that, so I never feel that edge with my hand. This one I do, back here. So I carved that with a knife. Of course, I believe this is a hollow handle. It has rivets. I believe it's hollow, it's plastic. So I didn't want to cut too much and cut right through and leave a hole or make it too flimsy or brittle. But I took my chances. I carved that very round. See how round that is here? It's like a ball almost here and almost like a ball there. And when I carved it, it looked a little bit white, kind of ruined the appearance. And plus I had the carving marks. But then I sanded it just a little bit to make it more smooth, and the color came back to orange. An added bonus, looks to me like a little squirrel now. Maybe that's just me. Now I have a friend in the woods. Let's go hiking! Ooh. Alright, enough of that. And this is an inner tube from a bicycle. Motorcycle inner tube was too big. So I found a junk motorcycle wheel, took out the tube, so that's for free, so that's grippy rubber, also absorbing the shock, and I secured it. There was less tension here and here because the blade tapers, so I made an incision in the inner tube and stretched it tight and taped it with black electrical tape. So now let's do some chopping and see how it grips. So we've got the same machete from the previous video, same tree. Here's where we cut last time. I'll just be cutting a little bit here. But the handle's been modified. That went a lot better with the modified handle as compared to stock. It's no pain in my joints at all. It's a lot grippier, had more control. And seem to go faster, even though I didn't time it last time, or now seem to go through the log a lot faster. After you buy a traditional machete, the first thing you have to do is sharpen it, because they come dull or at best semi-sharp. Yes, there's a difference between traditional machetes and knives. Of course, I realize that there's companies these days, particularly I'd say American companies, that sell what they call machetes, but in my mind they're much more similar to large knives, and they come sharp right out of the box, because that's what we expect these days. You buy a knife and it's sharp. However, traditional machetes, semi-sharp or unsharpened, that's just how it is. This is Trooper. It's a company based in Mexico. So they're selling the old style machetes. So when I got it, it had a grind on it, but little if no final edge. And this much of the blade here, like 3 fingers of the blade, was left completely unsharpened, no grind, just a 90-degree angle like you see there on the back. See that 90-degree angle, not sharpened at all? Well, the same was here on the front of the blade. So to sharpen your machete, you need a mill file. This one's a Nicholson file. Got that at Tractor Supply. Sold many places, not expensive. And this is sharpened, so I'm just demonstrating here. But when it comes from the factory, it has a grind on there. There's an angle. You kind of find that angle and you decide what sort of edge you want, and then you create that edge with the file. You complete the grind. And notice I'm always pushing, because the file has teeth. They're meant to cut in one direction. They go back and forth like this. You're not sharpening the machete and you're dulling the file. Don't want to pull, you always push. That takes off material until you get the grind where you want it, and then you can put it on a final edge. And in my opinion anyway, you can sharpen the working part of the machete just with a file. You don't need a stone or anything like that. You can. I don't think you have to. The shape of the machete, you see how it flares out here from the handle, and that's meant to put your weight forward and create a chopping edge, which is most of the work you do with the machete is chopping. So I'd call this the sweet spot. Right around there is your sweet spot. So you can look at a kitchen knife, for example, a paring knife, very closely. You can use a magnifying glass if you have to. Look closely at the blade. Look at a hunting knife, and then look at a hatchet, and you'll see the differences where one edge is more acute than the other. Your kitchen knife is much more acute than the edge on your hatchet, for example. So in between there somewhere, you get to decide. I don't measure angles, I just do things by eye and then see how it works with that particular machete. But you decide what sort of final angle you want. You can make it with a file or a stone, or I like using a diamond sharpener. And this one's from Harbor Freight. So if you use a diamond sharpener, you start at the coarsest grit, which for this one is 200, and then it goes 300, 400, and 600 is your finest grit. So you finish with that, and you just decide what sort of angle you want. Snow is slippery. Decide what sort of angle you want. And you create your edge. And I don't use a jig or anything. just doing it by hand and by eye, and you create that edge. Okay, so most of your work with the machete is with the chopping edge. But personally, I also like to have a carving edge for carving and whittling, more fine tasks. I want a finer edge. So if this is getting close to the kind of edge I'd have on a hatchet, here I sharpen basically a Scandi grind. So that would be similar, more similar to the edge on a Mora knife, for example, better for carving. So, like I said, they give you a safety here. Some people like the safety. They think, you know, you're chopping, doing that rough work, and you have 3 fingers basically a safety, so where it's just flat, unsharpened. So if your hand happens to slip forward, you're not going to cut your finger. But my hand never does that. Maybe it's good for other people, they like it, that's fine. With me, I don't think it's necessary. And then people say, well, if I'm going to carve, I choke up. So they choke up there. And then I got to be careful because I put an edge here. Don't do this, guys, but do have a glove on. They choke up and then they carve like that. But that seems awkward. Now you're talking about safety edge. Well, now my hand's actually on the blade and it's hard to know, even when I did have the safety, where the safety stops and the blade starts. So I'd rather have my hand on actual handle. I have this guard here. It's an integral guard. It's not huge, but just feeling with my finger as I use it, I can feel I'm on the handle and not the blade. If I started to do like this, I'd know real quick, but it doesn't happen just because I feel the guard and I keep my hand there. And then when I'm carving, it's just so much better. That one's a little green, not completely green, something dry. So it's real easy to create curls or carve, whatever I want to do, get shavings for a fire. So how I create this edge is I did a lot of aggressive filing because I'm going from flat stock to my own knife blade. I'm making my own knife blade for this section. So I figure out what angle I want. Instead of maybe like this, I want a much more acute angle, picturing my Mora knife. And then after I get close, then I transfer to the diamond block from the coarser down to the finer grit and just do a lot of work. And I didn't time it, but I'm thinking it's hours. Of course, it was between other things, just doing this for my hobby. But what is bushcraft anyway? In my mind, it's any sort of work you do in the woods, whether it's for recreation, like camping, having fun, or whether you're out in the woods doing whatever job you have, or whether you're reenacting what people did in the fur trade era or whatever you're reenacting. That can be a lot of fun. You're learning a lot of practical skills, and a lot of bushcraft, I would say, applies to survival, because you can take just simple tools that you have with you and make your shelter, make your fire, do whatever you need to do to survive. So in my mind, tuning up this machete is bushcraft. I want my chopping edge and I want my carving edge, much more fine edge. Then here I want a point for piercing, and I can also drill a little bit of an extent. And a lot of machetes, this one included, they did put a grind, but it was very blunt, even more blunt than the sweet spot here. It's because of workers, a lot of people actually working, doing their job, whatever it is, in the jungle, the woods. They don't want much of a point at all, because most of the injuries, I understand, with the machete, from working with the machete, is accidentally stabbing yourself with the point. So these are left dull. If you for safety's sake, you can leave it dull, even make it more blunt if you so choose. I like to sharpen it for more utility. I just know how to be careful. I watch myself when I'm swinging it. I make sure that if the blade goes further than I expect for whatever reason, I'm not there, you know, my arms and legs aren't there, and nobody else is around there either. So personally, I sharpen this the same method, file and then diamond sharpener usually. So this is my scraper edge. I don't have much of one because the saw is there and the cap lifter, bottle opener. But I like having the saw, but I just lose a lot of my scraping edge. Can make this into a scraping edge too. I'll show you this, how I create that. Could use a file. I'm going to use a diamond sharpener. Got on one of the coarser grits, got on 300. I just try to hold it at 90 degrees as much as I can. So that pairs up well with a ferro rod. Sharpening the saw. When this came from the factory, all the teeth on the saw were rounded, and I tried cutting with it and it didn't saw much at all. A little bit, but it would take it forever to get through even a tiny limb or whatever you're trying to do, and for larger jobs it just wouldn't be possible. And some people are saying that this is meant to be a fish scaler. I couldn't find anything from Trooper, from the company that makes this machete, but in my research I did find in Colma sells a machete much like this one. Apparently there's a trend or a fad in Central America where they call these Rambo machetes. They got the 12-inch blade, the saw, cap lifter and hook, but in Colma makes one almost identical, I would say, and in the description they're calling this a fish scaler. They say it's for fish scaling or for cutting. Well, in my opinion, this one anyway, didn't do much cutting, but you can take a file and sharpen the teeth, and at first it was intimidating because looks like a lot of teeth, a lot of work, but went really quick actually. And my first thought was a triangular file, but putting it on there didn't fit in, didn't seem to have the angles I wanted. So I went through my tools, and a drawer somewhere I found this that I'd used for a previous project. I'd modified the little file. Had to be little to get in there. And this file teeth here, I'd ground off the file teeth on the back and on this side. So this file teeth here and on this flat. But that was good because when I was filing the front of the teeth, I didn't want to be cutting into here. So this one was ground flat on the bottom, no teeth on the bottom anymore. So I could file the front of the tooth, then flip the file around and get the back of the tooth. And less is more, because I just could make the teeth be smaller and smaller until I'm essentially ruined my saw. But that's why I think it's good, these machetes, inexpensive machetes, a lot of them actually from Central America, they're made to work and they're inexpensive. This one, even in the States, you can get for $6 or $7 if you shop around and can find it in person at a hardware store or a feed store or something like that. But even if you get on eBay or Amazon, you can find one. They're cheap, and that way you're practicing these things. And if you make a mistake, it's no big deal. But even if you're making a mistake filing or sharpening the blade, that's a lot of blades, so I could always start with my grinding again, and I got plenty of metal, rather than buy this Primo knife for $200, $300, $500 and learn sharpening on that. $7 machete seems to make more sense in my mind, but you do you. But anyway, I just don't want to go hog wild, particularly when I was sharpening the back of the teeth. So I sharpened them all except for the last 3 teeth. I'll try to let you zoom in. Can you see rounded versus sharp? And I'll file the last few for you guys. The smart thing to do would have been to sharpen the saw first and then the blade. But I got the sharpened blade, and now I just got to be careful. I'm doing this in the woods, so I don't have a clamp. You know, if you had a clamp on a workbench, that would be a lot safer, right? I just have my piece of birch bark to protect my leg, and that's how it is. So I'm sharpening the front of the teeth. And like I said, less is more. The less material I can shave off and create a sharp tooth, the better. I'm going to flip it around, get the other edge. So even that little bit is making those teeth much, much sharper. I'll show you how it saws. You can compare it to the previous video. That was a world of difference. We went from a decorative saw to an actual saw. Let's try another one. Excellent. That made a world of difference, just that little bit of sharpening, making the teeth look pointy instead of rounded. However, the teeth aren't offset. With an actual wood saw, the teeth would be bent in an alternating fashion. A tooth bent this way and the other way, one way and the other way. It's called the offset teeth. And when they are offset, then as you saw, the teeth come out farther than the blade. You're making a hole, you're sawing a hole wider than the blade. This one isn't offset, so I'd be sawing a hole basically the same width as the blade. So as I go further and further down, it'll be harder because it'll tend to bind up, at least in theory. But the sawing I would use more for smaller jobs anyway. But I'll test it on a larger job just to see how it goes. Okay, so I got about halfway through that log, which maybe 2 to 3 inches diameter. It's pine. Even so, I'm binding up. Yeah, it's going to get really hard going further than that. That's because the teeth aren't offset. So could I make offset teeth? How would I do that? With a hammer and chisel, just gently? Or with pliers? I'm not sure. Do I want to? I think that's enough sawing capability for me. So probably just be leaving, at least for now. No offset teeth for me. Now let's talk about a shoulder strap. Sheath does come with a belt loop. You can carry it like that. However, wearing this M65 field jacket, it's a little bit long, so I attach this to my belt. If I have the jacket zipped or buttoned and the jacket's in the way, could put a belt outside my jacket. It's one way. However, a lot of people attach a shoulder strap, and what I do is I just steal a shoulder strap from like a photography bag or laptop bag or whatever sort of duffel bag or anything. They usually have these clips. They just can unclip. A lot of people just throw these away from whatever bag they get. So I can't remember ever buying one of these. There's just so many laying around. A lot of them I pulled out of the dump, and I just clip the two clips to each other. I could create some sort of loops on the sheath itself, but I just went through the belt loop that the sheath has and clip the two hooks together, and then has a pad like most of them do that makes it more comfortable. And there I go. I left the adjustment buckle on the front so I can make it tighter or looser. Actually, I'm raising or lowering the machete, but that's about right. So now it's not hanging way down. It's just kind of like under my armpit, and that's not dragging. It's not getting caught on things. And it's right there if I need it. You know, I can see it to put the machete back in the sheath. And really, that's what a lot of people do. That's basically, that's what works. What I find works. So, you know, nothing complicated or earth-shattering. Just can be a big help, but you try it, decide for yourself. Okay, so I think that's enough for now. Really thank you guys for joining me. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up, leave some comments. Some really nice comments for the previous video. Any other mods or tips or tricks that you know could really help people out, leave them in the comments. I'll catch you again soon. Be strong and courageous. Joshua 1:9.